Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Steph, and today I'm going to be showing you the progress that I've made working on Shatter Valley since the previous week. Now, while the previous 2 weeks were focused on a whole wide range of different features to try to pull the game together into a playable state, this week was pretty much entirely focused on just projectiles. I wanted to support more dynamic behaviors for projectiles so I can have different ones doing different things. And this quickly turned into me digging up and totally rewriting the whole projectile system. Now, while I was in there touching the bullet simulation code, that led to me having to touch all of the trail rendering code as well. So I sunk a huge amount of time into this, but at the end of the day, we have a much improved system for this stuff. So let me show you what that's capable of now. Okay, here we are over in the editor. We have pretty much the same looking game until we start shooting. So as you can see, the projectiles look very different, and I'll get into this in a minute, but first I'm going to talk about how the projectiles behave. I'm not sure if you knew or if you realized before, but the projectiles actually follow the ground when you shoot. So you can see in the top scene preview, the projectile is doing just that. Before I did this whole rewrite, every time you shot, a projectile path was created ahead of time, and then the projectile would follow that path. But that's no longer the case. Now the projectile is doing all those calculations on its way, like when it needs to. Now for this particular projectile behavior, this doesn't really make a difference functionally. However, we now have a lot more flexibility for different kinds of behaviors that we can do. So let's take a look at some of those that I've implemented so far. So here I have a bunch of parameters for the behavior of the projectiles, and you can see it's set to grounded right now. I can turn that off, and then now our projectiles no longer follow the ground, they actually just go straight and they collide with whatever they collide with. I'm going to turn that back on, and I'm also going to turn on maybe acceleration. And now we have a very different feeling projectile. These guys actually come out very slowly and then accelerate up to their max speed after some delay. I also have the opposite here, which is drag. So this will probably end up leading to some much better visuals. Instead of the projectile just disappearing, it can kind of fizzle out. There still needs to be some visual changes to make that make sense, but you can see that that already looks pretty neat. Now the third and final behavior that I have built in for now is seeking. So now I've got some homing projectiles, kind of like the Needler or something. And I have different parameters to mess with this, so if I want to increase the map. And now we have some pretty overpowered auto-aim stuff going on, but it's pretty neat. Feels cool. Already I have, just with the basic ones implemented, I have some interesting behaviors that I can use to make different weapons and make different things in the game that you might be excited to find. What I'm doing really is building tools to make a lot of differentiation between different weapons. The more different things there are in the game, the more fun it is to try to hunt them down. At least that's the theory. So these still have some improvements to be made, and I've also got some more complicated and silly ideas to try out. But I should also talk about the visuals. Obviously the projectiles look a whole lot better than they did before. This is just my first attempt at making a projectile trail. It's one idea that I had. Possibilities for these trails are endless because now they're being controlled by this. This is a shader. This is a shader graph shader that I've been playing around with, trying in order to build this trail. Now, I've never really written a lot of shaders before. I've done very basic stuff, and I've never really played with the shader graph much. So this is my first attempt, and it's involving a lot of learning, and it's taking a lot of time. But I'm already getting some pretty pleasing effects. This is nowhere near some of the stuff that I have in my mind. We'll see if I can get to that stuff. But it's actually really fun, and I'm probably going to spend a whole lot more time working on these VFX because I've always wanted to do it, but I've just never really had the time, or never dedicated the time to learning more VFX stuff. But yeah, with the information that I have in the trail meshes combined with shaders to take advantage of them and material parameters and whatnot, like for example, I can make this really fat, right? Instantly I can really make huge changes to the project. That's actually really fun. Oh my god, that looks fantastic. But yeah, I just have so much flexibility, infinite possibilities as far as generating the trails. And not only can I make really interesting individual trails, I can also spawn up to 4 different material trails for each projectile. So yeah, I've got a lot of crazy ideas as far as how to use this and what kind of stuff to make with it. This is already looking pretty good, and we'll see how much time I spend in the near future on it, because admittedly there are more important things to work on. But yeah, I'm really excited with the possibility space. The best part about this whole system for my nerdy ass is that the performance is phenomenal. So here you can see I'm running a build, and I've got a frame rate counter in the top right there, and it's locked in at about 240 FPS. The game's not just rendering at 240 FPS. In fact, I've got it locked to 240 artificially. And this is because I'm actually running the game sim at 240. In Unity terms, this means I have my fixed update at 240 FPS. So I'm running all the physics, all the enemy AI, granted they're not on the screen right now. And I'm running all these projectile simulations without deviating too far from 240 FPS. While I'm nerding out and showing off, I should also show you this little editor tool that I made to simulate the projectiles in the editor mode without having to go into play mode. And I can actually scrub through the timeline of this projectile being shot through its whole history, and I can just repeat it. I can also just set its time scale to 1 and have it resimulate. And this way I can actually edit the material properties and the shader and do all kinds of wacky shit without having to go into play mode and set up a bunch of stuff. So this should really improve the iteration time for coming up with these VFX. I'm gonna be really tempted to just work on VFX for the next 8 months, but I'm gonna do my best to resist that urge and actually make this game functional and fun first. So don't get too excited to have a bunch of different projectiles yet. They're all probably gonna look like this for a little while, but come mid-October or November, I'll be able to just dedicate a bunch of time to making this game look good. So exciting times, looking forward to doing that stuff. With that, I think that's all for this update. I have nothing more to show. It's all projectile stuff today, and that was just like a really big, difficult system, lots of code. I rewrote like thousands of lines of code to get that working, but I'm really happy with where it's at, and I'm really excited for the opportunities that it brings. So sorry you're not getting a build this week. You can't quite play with this stuff yet. My goal before releasing the next build is to use this to create some meaningful content, some different weapon types that you can actually hunt down and collect, and make some good content out of this. So once I've done that and I've made a few variations, different guns and different behaviors, and finished up some of the more advanced behaviors that I want to put in, I'll look at making a build. I'll probably wait until next weekend. I'll have some more progress done as well on other systems. But yeah, I think the next build will be content focused, just on weapons and stuff. So if you're interested in the game, look forward to that. And again, if you are interested in the game, thank you so much for your interest in the game. If you want to make sure that you know about that build when it's coming up, feel free to follow me here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, y'all, and check back next week where I'll have a build. I promise you I'll have a build next Saturday. Or follow me on itch. Maybe that would be a good thing. I'm not sure. Probably not. I don't know how many people keep itch open very often. Or the Discord server for this game. If you're really into it, hop over there, and you can also get the demo build of the game. But anyway, I digress. It's time for a rest day / sneaking in a bunch of shader programming. Yeah, I'll see you next week. Thank you.